Well, we do have a new, pretty crazy poll that's been released, a head-to-head matchup, and now CNN coming out and saying, yeah, this is a big problem for Biden. I saw several different polls that they've released over the past week looking at the underlying metrics, and this national poll just head-to-head Biden Trump sitting +6. You include RFK Jr., Weston Stein. Trump's popular vote lead is 9. Trump's lead is the largest in CNN polls history. And it's not just this poll, there's been other polls that CNN has done that show a noticeable increase, more support for Trump than Biden. And now apparently Trump is officially more popular and more liked by the American people than Biden. That's been confirmed by multiple mainstream news sources. They don't want to report it, but it's the facts, with Trump up big. And obviously there's still a long way before the election. If you go back to 2020, I've been thinking about 2020. It's such an outlier year. I'm not saying, just because the results, that's why it's an outlier, because the pandemic happened in March of 2020. So that entire election season is almost completely irrelevant. That's not how we're living here in 2024. The total and the heavy part of the pandemic was happening right when we were going to vote. Most people didn't get back to normal until late 2021, but even 2022. If you remember in 2021, all the sporting events were limited capacity. We were not in a normal place in 2020. And again, the result is what it is, but I'm just saying it's hard to put a lot of stock into it. Trump obviously falling short, losing to Biden. If that pandemic doesn't happen, we know it is very likely a different result. But these numbers, this is just the general election. And this is what they were clinging to, Biden making up ground in the general head-to-head popular vote, which is irrelevant. But even in this now, they're saying, no, it's not happening, Trump +6. We're going to need to see more polls. But Biden's little surge, there was really no surge in terms of swing states. I mean, you still have the 3 normal swing states. You can see the 2 recent CNN polls, and then CBS News comes out, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Trump +1, Biden +2. Those states, it is what it is. As long as Trump wins Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia, there's going to be a lot less pressure in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I do think there are paths for Trump, even if he loses those 3 states. But the inclination is, if he wins both Nevada and Arizona, him losing the 3 Rust Belt states seems very unlikely. Technically, it can happen because there's going to be such thin margins in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And basically every poll confirms that. It's 50-50 in all of these states. You could argue here and there maybe Trump is leading in Michigan and Wisconsin by a little bit. Pennsylvania's back and forth. But right now, based on that general election CNN poll, based on some of the underlying metrics, Biden's approval rating is not getting any better. And I do want to talk about the interesting contrast and this little graph. And I'm sure liberals will come out and say, we've been vindicated. Biden is not getting the proper respect he deserves. He's overhated. If you look at this rare combo of low unemployment rate and low approval. And you can see 3 of Biden's years towards the bottom, to where our unemployment rate is so low, but poor Biden is still disliked. He's such a great president with that low unemployment rate, when in reality the cost of living is so much higher. The unemployment rate is irrelevant. You have younger kids with 2 jobs working 45, 50 hours a week, and they're making 70 or 80K, they can't afford to buy a home. That's why unemployment rate, while it is still important and we want people to work and be functioning members of society, the cost of living is so high, the unemployment rate is becoming more and more irrelevant. And that's why when you reference unemployment rate, it doesn't really matter. And you can see even with the low unemployment rate, a lot of people saying those numbers are false. Somebody mentioned in the comments of it, this was a tweet, and they were like, yeah, they changed the definition of the word recession. So people saying these are erroneous numbers. The unemployment rate is really not that low. But what people have to understand, it really doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because the cost of living from the pandemic is so much worse. And you've got such ridiculous inflation estimates, the low estimates saying purchasing power has been lost around 25% since 2020. So our dollar now is worth 75 cents. It's crazy. The inflation is totally out of control, and the actual inflation number, if you go back to when Biden took over, it's around 19 to 20%. It's really not 3%. That's a rolling average based on the previous year. It doesn't really make sense to count that when you're talking about president versus president. The inflation is ridiculous under Biden. The purchasing power is down. So even if you're employed, you could be triple employed. You could be working 70 hours a week. Because we're in such a worse spot, it's very hard for people to earn enough money to be able to save enough to put a down payment onto a new house and possibly, in a nice suburban area or wherever. So that's why I think you're seeing it. Now, obviously, this is going to be spun as poor old Biden. He's such a great president with low unemployment, right? And he's not getting the respect, when in reality, you have to look at other metrics that are driving Biden's unemployment rate down. Again, you could be 300% employed, meaning you have 3 jobs, but if the inflation is out of control and you have low purchasing power, that doesn't mean you're in a good place because you have 2 or 3 jobs. That's actually worse because you're having to work more and enjoy your life less. So that's why I believe those numbers are like that. And then you've got this scoop: Biden changes walking routine to Marine One. I don't know if you guys have seen this report. Why it matters. With aides walking between Biden and journalists' camera positions outside of the White House, the visual effect is to draw less attention to the 81-year-old's walk. Apparently, advisors and now mainstream media coming out and admitting Biden can barely walk. We're trying to shield him because we don't want the public to see how he's walking. And you have to think, why would they run Biden again? And really, what is my speculation when it comes to this? I'm guessing they probably would exchange Biden for Michelle Obama. I don't know if she said no. At this point, are we too late in the process? I really don't think so. But in terms of exchanging Biden for Gavin Newsom, propping up Newsom, I think we're too late for that. I would imagine the only thing they could do is possibly install Michelle Obama. But even that, now that we're late into April, basically into May, it seems like they are going to try running Biden again. It's so ridiculous. They're shielding him now from journalists and admitting, yes, he's struggling to walk. He can't walk up a plane. He's got to use another entrance to get up there. But this guy is going to be the president for the next 4 years. It makes no sense. They're pigeonholed. They have no other choice. Kamala's somehow even worse, so they have to stick with Biden and say, well, the name recognition, the incumbent advantage, it's better than propping up Newsom. And I do agree with them. I think Newsom is an extremely overrated politician, what he's done to California. How about the communists from China coming in and Newsom admitting, yes, I don't care about the American people. I cleaned up the city because the communists are coming in, and basically laughing about it in a press conference. I think he's extremely overrated. Either way, it seems like they're really trying to dress Biden up. This is not 2020 where he can hide in his basement and not do anything. He's got to come out and campaign because of the situation we're in versus 2020 with the pandemic and the excuses that were made and the very limited rallies that were held. Obviously, Trump's going to be going to multiple places, many different days, and campaigning. Can Biden keep up with that? I don't think so. I think it's going to be more of a fear-mongering tactic against Trump, which is total gaslighting against the American people, and you're seeing people wake up to it. You're fear-mongering. We have multiple conflicts that have happened under Biden that could turn global, and none of this was happening under Trump. So how is there fear-mongering, and how is there a threat to democracy when Trump left office in 2020, and then they made it seem like January 6th was worse than 9/11. So disrespectful. Either way, guys, right now, CNN, you don't want to react to a singular poll, but the narrative was, well, we're starting to see Biden closing on Trump in terms of the head-to-head matchup, which, again, I said in my last political video, it really is irrelevant when it comes to general election popular vote. Biden could be leading by 2 or 3 in terms of average going into election night. Take the context in 2020 with Biden leading the popular vote by 7, and Trump very easily could have won that election. That was with Biden leading the popular vote by 7 going into the election night, meaning the head-to-head general election polls had Biden up 7, and they overestimated him in terms of popular vote by 3, but it wouldn't have even mattered if Trump would have won a few more votes in states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, possibly Arizona, Michigan as well, that would have more than made up for it, and Trump would have won the election. You could say maybe they've shifted how they do polls. They're capturing more Trump supporters now. But it is an interesting turn we're seeing, and I had said that it wasn't like the swing states were really switching, because the three swing states right now, the Rust Belt states, I'll agree with you there. But you want to say North Carolina is a swing state right now? I mean, not really. Trump's up in like basically every poll by at least 5 or 6 points. It's the same thing in Georgia. It's the same thing in Arizona and Nevada. So you can say those are swing states, and technically you'd be right. But if you've got like 8 straight polls with Trump up by at least 3 or 4 points, you have to say at least Trump, it's a slight lean Republican for states like that. And then you're really focused on the 3 swing states. Like if we're going into election night and this is how the polling looks, Trump is just looking amazing. And it's not a lock that he's going to win all these swing states, but based off of the polls, it does look very promising. And it's not just the polls, it's also the other metrics. When you look at the likability of Trump versus Biden and the complete 180 we've seen from 2020 to 2024, I'm not saying Trump isn't polarizing, and they've got all of their felony charges, all of the cases against Trump. They're going to try and use that. We'll see how many people swing towards Biden because of it. But based on Biden's approval rating right now, it would be shocking if he won with those type of metrics. He needs to improve significantly. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.